Mission Impossible Final Reckoning is once again directed by Christopher McQuarrie, and it is Tom Cruise's final outing as the corporate operative for the IMF, Ethan Hunt. Following the events of Dead Reckoning, Ethan Hunt and his newfound group must race against time as they are trying to find a way to shut down this new AI-generated entity from destroying the entire world. Tom Cruise, you cheeky son of a bitch. You just so happened to make one of the greatest action franchises of all time, and now you are just going to, throw it all away. You're just going to retire the Mission Impossible series, potentially. How dare you, sir, even though I just only started watching them from the one that was made previous. How dare you leave us in the dust of being such a great action star and making this your final movie. In all seriousness, though, I thought that this movie was great in a lot of instances. This had a lot of stuff riding on it because the last movie was not well received, even though I thought it was fine, and I don't really think that there's a bad Mission Impossible movie in this franchise outside of number 2. But regardless, a lot of stuff was riding on this one being the operative final outing for Tom Cruise in this franchise, reportedly, and I gotta say that they did do a fantastic job in wrapping up this series. Not to spoil too much about this movie, but I thought that Final Reckoning did a great job in kind of intertwining a lot of the storylines that we had previously in the Mission Impossible series to kind of make it a satisfying ending for the most part. I do think with its very bloated near 3-hour runtime that the first act of this movie is a bit rough on first viewing. Not to say that it might not fly by for you and might fly by in different viewings of this film, but couldn't help but notice that the first time seeing this, that first hour was, a lot to get through. But once you get to the final 2 acts, the film just kind of builds on itself, and the team has to go through so many other hoops and ladders to this crescendo of an ending, and I thought by the end of it I was on the edge of my seat and I found myself cheering along with the rest of the audience. Tom Cruise's Ethan Hunt is one of the last living legends that we have in the action stars genre, and he doesn't disappoint yet again. I found his performance to be just as good as almost every other performance in this Mission Impossible franchise. It is like his little baby at this point, and I can say the same thing about a lot of the other side characters too. Simon Pegg is again a standout in this franchise, only being introduced I want to say in the 3rd movie, and then doesn't miss it after that. He's always been great comic relief, and I just love how his character throughout the franchise kind of gets a little bit more responsibility every time you kind of see him. The first time you see him in 3, he's just a tech guy that works at the IMF and is just doing the stuff at his desk there. But as you progress throughout the films, he ends up becoming a field agent, and then he kind of does a little bit more kind of on-field action rather than just being the guy that hacks the things. He actually takes an even bigger leap, I think, in Final Reckoning. Hayley Atwell can do no wrong in my opinion, and I don't think I need to elaborate on that. But in all seriousness, Hayley Atwell more than holds her own in the Final Reckoning. I thought that her character was a little bit of kind of like you had to kind of build it up a little bit because she was only introduced in the film prior to this one, and while I think she steals every scene in the first movie, she also does a great job in this one. She has more time spent with Ethan and all the other characters in this group, so it's kind of nice to see how the pairings of each other kind of start to work and how she kind of asserts herself as one of the core pieces of this group. And there are some negatives in this film too. It is not the best Mission Impossible movie in this entire franchise. The best one being Fallout. It is one of the most perfect action movies of the modern era, I would say. But I do find it serviceable even with its mishaps. For starters, not just the runtime as stated earlier, but I found its villain to be pretty weak yet again. A rendition of the first movie for Gabriel, a man who is obsessed with the entity and wants to do everything in his power to make sure that the entity wins and rules the Earth. I found his performance to be, while slightly better because he gets a little bit more to do in this film, I just don't think that he was that great of a villain in general. The rest of the movies in this franchise don't have a great track record of great villains. I think the best one is, most people would say, Philip Seymour Hoffman in Mission Impossible 3. And while I'm not the biggest fan of Mission Impossible 3 because it's directed by J.J. Abrams, I can still appreciate a great performance even if it's a film that I did not enjoy as much as the rest. However, Gabriel is not that for Final Reckoning. And honestly, the plot felt like there were too many cooks in the kitchen. It kind of felt like there were so many different aspects of the story happening because it's stuff for America mostly, and then you're going to Russia, and you're going to London, and you're going to all these other places around the world. And while in theory it's like, yes, you have to go to these places because the entity is infecting the entire internet and the entire sort of cybersecurity network, it also lends itself to being like, we are going in multiple directions, and it doesn't feel like sometimes that the film can really stick to one place and really hone in on the story. That's not to say that there isn't a ton of fan service and a ton of really great moments in The Final Reckoning. I thought that, once again, like I said earlier, it ties in a lot of stuff for the franchise in this film, and you know, if this is reportedly the final film of this series, I think it went out on a bang. Tom Cruise is a fucking maniac, as always, because the stunts in this are just as good as pretty much anything he's ever done. Some of my favorite stunts in Mission Impossible, obviously one of them being where he's scaling the side of the Burj Khalifa, where he's also flying a helicopter in Fallout, falling off of a helicopter in Fallout, and the plane sequence in Final Reckoning is up there with some of his best work. Again, I was really happy with this. I thought that it does a lot of good, even though it is a little bit of a slog to get through towards the beginning. But once you get to a certain aspect of the story, everything kind of kicks it into a next gear, and then you're like, what's going to happen next? I got to see this next story beat. I got to see how they get out of this situation. The tension keeps building and building and building and building up into this crescendo. And like I said, I thought it definitely serviced the fans, I thought, for sure. And I don't know what else you want me to say. Tom Cruise, he did it again. He did it again, folks. I'm going to give Mission Impossible Final Reckoning 4 stars. Thank you guys so much for watching. Look forward to more reviews very soon. If you check the socials down below, we have a ton of reviews on different platforms, also talking about certain things on Twitter. You could go to TikTok, where I posted reviews for Warfare and Final Destination recently. And you could also go to my Letterboxd, where I've documented my ratings for the other Mission Impossible films. And with a franchise as lengthy as this one, here is my list for my rankings of the Mission Impossible franchise. I'll also put that in my Letterboxd in case you want to ever take a look at it. I think that Fallout is objectively the best one, but there are some really great ones. Ghost Protocol is very slept on. Tune in next time for some more reviews, and the next one being probably a much more angry and not so sane version of myself, where we talk about Lilo and Stitch. So get ready for that one, folks. Thanks again for watching. Keep those cinemas alive, and I will talk to you all next time.